Hi, folks. We're going to get started soon. I'm just waiting for our third panelist to join us. I think Lizzette is having some issues with internet or connecting, so we're going to get started soon. But in the meantime, if you want to familiarize yourself with the Zoom platform, I'm sure all of you have been using Zoom a lot, as have I, in this virtual world. So I see we have some attendees here. Thanks for joining. You know what? I think Lizzette is here.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Lizzette. Sorry if you were waiting in the attendee thing. I think maybe I added a different email, but I'm glad you're here. So we're going to get started. Thank you all for joining. My name is Hannah Halloran. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the graduate assistant in programming at the Center for Career Development. Welcome to our internship panel, Experiences of BIPOC Students. This is an event as a part of our internship research and co-op month at the Center for Career Development. So this is one of many events that are occurring. There's also going to be a research panel happening, I believe, next week on the 23rd, yes. February 23rd from 12 to 1:30, which is, it's called a research panel, the Black experience. So that might also be of interest to some of you. And we will have information at the end about how to find these other events happening this month and how you can get involved with our office. So before we start, I just want to do some introductions. So I already said my name is Hannah, my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'll hand it over to Erin, who is co-hosting today with me. Erin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Erin. I am a senior applied math and stats double major. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I work as a CLAS career ambassador at the Center for Career Development. So I will be co-hosting this panel today with Hannah, and I'm really excited to get started. So I think if we can pass it over to the panelists to introduce themselves.
Yeah, so I have some bios here, so I'm going to read those for you because I know sometimes it's a little awkward to introduce yourself like that. So I'm going to read those really quickly so our attendees are familiar, and then we can, I'll pass it off to you folks, the panelists, to give some more insight. So today we have Lizzette, better known as Lizzie. Lizzette is a sophomore at UConn Stores with an interest in law, public policy, and advocacy. She's a Latina who looks to give back to the community and raise awareness on issues such as immigration, racism, restorative justice, higher education for marginalized students, and is looking forward to speaking about internships with everyone. We also have Nidhi, who is a sophomore at UConn, majoring in economics and statistics. She is a spring economic policy intern at Our National Conversation, a startup that focuses on providing nonpartisan policy solutions. She is also a part-time intern at Listen First, an organization that is committed to reducing polarization in the United States. As an immigrant and an international student, she is passionate about seeking out opportunities beyond the classroom. In her free time, she enjoys yoga and creative writing. And lastly, we have Naydrine. Naydrine is a senior at the University of Connecticut, majoring in communication. She is set to graduate in May and plans to work full-time at Target as an executive team leader. Naydrine has involved herself in numerous ways throughout campus by participating in student activities, joining organizations, and getting part-time jobs at the Center for Career Development and the Student Recreation Center. She has also recently started her journey to become a beauty and fashion content creator and influencer and makeup artist. In her free time, Naydrine likes to create content for her YouTube channel, makeup page, and spend time with friends and family. So I'll pass it off to you, Lizzette, first. to maybe provide some more information I've missed, and maybe give an introduction about your internship experience that you'll be speaking about today.
Hey everyone, so my name's Lizzette or Lizzie. I basically started with Hearing Youth Voices, a youth organization based in New London for educational justice. And that's kind of what got my interest in just advocacy and social justice. And from there, I came to UConn. I internshipped with QUELF, which is Connecticut Women's Education and Legal Fund, with Hannah, and it was a really great experience. I was able to talk to different clients about different subjects, from family law to even immigration law sometimes. And overall, I think those were all great experiences that now I'm able to go forth and look into like other things that I may be interested in. But yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Thank you. Nidhi, would you like to provide any more context to you and your experiences?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Hannah. I regret making it as cringy as I did, but so I'm an econ and statistics major, as she mentioned, and I am interning with Our National Conversation, which is like this startup that just began. I mean, no, it's been there for a year, but it's been trying really hard to reduce hyperpolarization in the US by providing like economic research and public policy ideas, and they're trying to publish it. And I've been working with them to research like policy solutions and look into how general public policy has a lot of loopholes and problems with it. And I'm really interested in interning in more organizations like that. So if any of you have questions about these things, I will be really happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Nidhi. And Naydrine, would you like to share anything else that I may have missed?
Hi, everyone. My name is Naydrine. Like Hannah said, I'm a senior and all that. I did work with Hannah at my internship at the CCD, but the internship that I recently just did was with Target. It's called an executive intern position. So basically, I spent 6 weeks in Target stores learning the ins and outs of how to manage a store. So for those who don't know, Target has about like, I want to say like 6 different departments within their store. And then I spent time learning from the current managers there, their roles, what they do on a day-to-day basis, learning the business and things of that nature. So yeah, if you have any questions about retail or beauty fashion industry, like I'm your person. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Naydrine. So just to quickly provide some context to how today's panel is going to go, we'll go through some questions that we've put together for all of you, and you may answer in any order. And then we'll shift to questions from the audience. So you can submit questions at any point throughout the presentation through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And we will add those to our list of questions. I know many of you who registered submitted questions when you registered. So I have those already. So we'll be asking those as well, but feel free to submit questions, and Erin or I will organize those and make sure they're asked. So the first question that I have for all of you today is, why were you initially interested in obtaining an internship?
I can go. I've been studying like the intersection of like economics and like data analysis for a long time. So I started learning like this language called R, and I was getting into Python, and I was just like dealing with these like huge data sets about poverty in the US and about public policy solutions and how they usually fail at addressing a lot of like government situations. So I wanted to be more involved in experiential learning. So I tried to apply to a lot of internships that seemed to address those two issues that I had. So I looked into internships that particularly gave me experience in what I was interested in. And it really turned out well for me, thankfully. So that was why I was interested in looking for an internship in the first place.
Great.
I would definitely say it's for more experience. I personally am looking to go into public policy. And so one of the things that interested me into Qualf was the fact that I could see just how policy was developed, but also I could also talk to people, and I could also just hear from people what they were going through on a one-on-one basis. And that was really helpful. For me personally, I have been going back and forth with the idea of law school. Not sure if that's what I want to go into or if I do. And so I thought that Qualf would be a perfect place for me to get more experience, and especially potentially in nonprofits, which may be what I work into. And I just think at the time with COVID going on, Qualf is actually stationed in Hartford, and I don't live anywhere near Hartford. So it was almost like a perfect timing. It was almost like COVID had a lot of disadvantages, but that was one of the COVID blessings you can say about it. So yeah.
Thank you.
For me, I'm gonna be completely honest with everyone here. I just needed a job. Like I was at a point where it's like, okay, like I'm about to graduate. What did I want to do? I don't know. I'm a communications major, so it was so broad. I can literally do anything. So I literally walked into the CCD's internship fair, and I was just walking around, and anybody that looked friendly enough where I was just like, hey, like let me just talk to them and give them my resume, I did. So I had walked over to Target because I was familiar that they had an internship program the year before. So I believe like my sophomore year, but I think I was too young. Like they were looking for juniors and seniors. So I was like, okay. And then when I seen them again, I was like, oh, like Target. And then like I said, I had a background in retail. So I've been working in retail since I was like 16. So from then on, I was just talking with the store recruiters and the store directors, and they were just like, you want to interview? And I'm like, sure. And then like down the line, like I later found out, like I actually really like, working for Target. It wasn't just something that's like, oh, I just did it just to get a job, but like it's relatable to me in terms of like my background and what I want to do. So yeah. So at first, like coming into UConn, I wanted to be more like tech because I thought that's where the money was and all that. But to be very honest, I learned quick, like I don't even really like not that I don't like tech, but like the stages to get there where I realized I didn't like it and it wasn't really for me. I'm more of on like, the artsy side, and like my bio stated, like, fashion and beauty and stuff like that. And I'm more of like an extrovert, so I relate to people a lot. So the internship itself gave me a position to do things that I like. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
I'll go ahead and ask the next question. So was there anyone you all reached out to for support when you recognized that this was an interest you wanted to pursue? Or like who and what helped you through this application process?
For me personally, I was in quarantine. At the time, I wasn't living in my own place. I was living with my parents at the time. So I wanted something that didn't feel like I was just watching Netflix all day. I wanted something that just, I don't know, to help me feel a little bit more productive. So really, I went online. I Googled a bunch of places. I went into, because I worked in Hearing New Voices in New London, I kind of looked into orgs that like were around the area, so say Futures, et cetera, et cetera. And then after a while, it just kept going into this, like, after you look at one org, there's like, hey, we've worked with this person. And then it keeps going into those like websites. And I just found Qualf. And I remember at the time, the website said, looking for no interns. They had already filled up all their positions. And I thought like, well, I mean, what's the hurt in just emailing and sending my resume? So that's literally what I did to a bunch of these websites. I just sent my resume. I said, hey, I'm interested. I'm looking for experience. I'm literally down to do whatever you guys want me to do as an intern. If you want me to do calls, I can do calls. And they reached back and they were like, yeah. And I guess I learned a lesson there, because I think sometimes don't take for like, just because websites said they weren't available, it turns out that they were actually looking. So it was like perfect timing. So that's how I got into it.
Just to reiterate the question, but are we answering like what resources or how we found the application?
What resources you use? So like, was there anyone you reached out to, or like any resources from the center's website or anything like that?
Okay, so I utilize, it's kind of like bias, but I worked with the CCD, so I was familiar that was like my big resource for me, because not only did I work there, but I was close and I knew like the head staff who had a lot of like connections with other people. So when I had told them that I was applying for Target, one of the full-time staff workers, she actually knows one of the recruiters, like on a more personal level. So I kind of relied on her and, you know, other things that I were taught on how to apply for the position, how to get through the whole interview process. So I would say that definitely the Center for Career Development was personally for me like one of my big resources that I felt like helped me when it came to the application process, the interview process, and then just sealing the deal with getting the internship.
I wish I could say the same, but for me, I never really knew that the Center for Career Development existed until like this semester. So I was just kind of winging it when it came to like how my cover letters tended to look and how my resume looked. And I was talking to someone from CCD recently, and they were looking at my resume and they were like, oh my God, I can't believe you actually got into things with this resume. And my cover letter was pretty like, it was pretty basic and all over the place, so I didn't really have any like actual resources that I could take advantage of, but I am planning to do the mock interview with someone from the center and definitely reforming my resume in terms of resources. I feel like UConn has a lot of like untapped resources that we can look into.
Thank you. We actually did get a question from one of the attendees, and I think this, based on what Nidhi just asked or just talked about, I think this would be a great question to ask now. The question is, when you look back, why do you think you got your internship from an applicant standpoint? So based on your cover letter or resume or your actual like process of applying, what do you think helped you in being successful?
I think for me personally, it was like, I don't want to sound off pop, but it literally was me, because I personally, I didn't feel like I was like a strong writer. I literally hate writing essays. So when it came to my resume and my cover letter, I just felt like, you know, I just put what I tailored it to what they were looking for. But, you know, me on paper and me in person are two completely different things. Like I literally had a professor tell me that. And he was like, wow, like you're so great in person. I'm like, yeah, I know. But when I was talking with the, in my interview, and I just made myself sound relatable. Like whenever they would ask me to tell them about a time when I did this or tell me about a time when I did that, I literally like drew from examples of things that I used to do either at school or at my previous jobs. And it was just like a conversation. So making myself, you know, relatable as possible, but also giving them information that they're looking for. So I know a big thing like with Target is leadership. So I know a lot of the answers that they wanted from me was to showcase how was I showcasing leadership throughout the roles that I had. So I know that that was something for me to talk on and hone on. So it was literally just being myself and just having like an open conversation. And I feel like that even kind of makes the whole format of like recruiter me like a little less nerve-wracking, because I just literally took it as a regular conversation. I was still respectful, you know, I still had great body gestures and things like that, but I literally took it as like, you know, I've known you for so long, and it was just like a natural organic dialect.
I think that's very interesting because for me, it was a little bit different. Like, I feel I got my internship because of my cover letter. This might be just something that I've noticed, but when you're applying for internships in college, it's very different than when you apply for jobs after you graduate, because most people tend to read your cover letters when you're applying to like think tanks and when you're applying to like, like specialized organizations that do like one specific thing, not exactly like a corporate company, but something that's more into like research or data analysis and stuff, they tend to read your cover letter. And it's really important that you tailor it to the company and to your strengths. So I know that I was interested in like doing a lot of research for organizations, and I was also interested in like writing and copy editing and things like that. So I used to apply to like 3 or 4 different kinds of internships. And each time I made sure that the cover letter had like 1 paragraph about the company and why I was interested in them, and 1 paragraph about why my background made me the best candidate for the job. And I found that that was, at least in my experience, that was what correlated to the number of like acceptances I got back.
I would just firstly, I'm glad we're having this conversation because I do not have a cover letter. I have not thought about it. I have like a resume that I have like made just very simple, and like I definitely will use UConn's resources now, like in the future. But I think what the reason why I got the internship, I is for the same reason. I think I was just myself. I was very honest. It was a time where like no one predicted we'd be in quarantine, and even then I was still searching. And I think I did look into the website before emailing. I did look into sort of what they were about, what they were looking for, and that did help me when doing the interview. It did help me kind of tailor it to them. But for the most part, it was mainly me. And I think another thing too was I felt more relaxed because I didn't put all my eggs in one basket, if that makes sense. Like I felt more relaxed in the interview, in the process, because I thought, okay, if this doesn't work out, it's okay because I've emailed these other places. And I think that was really helpful to, I guess, ease my nerves, because I think I'm someone like I can be very extroverted or I can be very introverted. Like it just kind of flips for me. So yeah, definitely not putting all your eggs in one basket helped me feel more comfortable.
Lizzette, one thing to, if you don't mind, Hannah, to say to like your point with the cover letter thing, like it's always good to have a cover letter, but one thing I really noticed with, and it again varies by business or industry, like sometimes some employers is like, I have a cover letter, would you like it? And they'd be like, no, it's okay. Like it all literally depends on like where you're going to. So I would always say like it's good to have one, but and to show like, offer it, but not, I know like a lot of people that I have like met or like talked to, they'll be like, the cover letter is nice, but most of the time, like there is probably just going to be in your file and they may not even read it. But to everyone like listening, I would definitely say just do your research of if they would like a cover letter or not. Still have one to be safe, but don't think like, oh my gosh, like I don't have a cover letter, like I'm never going to get a job, like, so it all just depends.
Thank you for that. I definitely think like it's interesting hearing it because I didn't know that was like, I guess, something to potentially add. And I will say like I have done, I don't want that to sound cocky, but I've done a lot as far as like as being part of things, and I feel like I've done it all without necessarily having like all the things, I guess. So thanks.
Thank you all. So I'll move into the next question. And of course, like as I'm asking these questions, if something else comes up, please expand on that. Don't feel like you have to stick directly to the question. You can veer back to other questions we've asked if something comes up. But one thing we're curious about is why did you choose to apply to that organization or company? Or what was important to you when you were searching for internships? Maybe like the mission or the structure of the organization. Was there anything like that you were looking for?
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but for me, it was very important that I could do some kind of research so I could put that on my resume, because I'm really interested in doing something similar at a think tank after I graduate. So I was very focused on that. So I went on Chegg internships, and I also went on individualized like opportunities pages that a lot of universities have. This is something that UConn could really benefit from, is that usually in your major, like they have a website. Like I'm an economics major, so like they usually have an economics website that unfortunately does not have a separate link to like who is looking for research jobs, or like think tanks, or like corporate companies or consulting firms that want to hire people. We don't have that resource. So I went on a lot of other schools' websites and looked at the resources or links to jobs that they offered. And I made like a giant notes page with a lot of internships and a lot of like deadlines that I could slowly check off. And I noticed that all of them had something to do with like research in public policy and combining like my experience in like statistical languages with my interest in economic policy. So that's kind of what I was focused on when I selected internships to apply to.
I think for me, when I really thought about like, what do I really want to do in terms of like full time? Because again, as I don't know if anybody can see by now, I'm very like almost kind of transparent. So I'll be like real. If I was to be very honest, I don't like want to work. Ideally, if I, could be able to like live off for the rest of my life with enough money to be good, I would not work. But we're not in an ideal world. So I thought about like, I like management. I like managing people. That's actually one of the things that I wanted to get into when I first got to UConn was to be a business major. That didn't work out, another story for another day. But so I'm like, where do I want to work at that will give me the same kind of feel that I want to do when I'm working? So Target, when I asked them a little bit more about what the position entails, it was more geared towards management and working with people. And I'm more of like a people person. I like talking with people. So I was like, okay, this seems something that like I can do. And then there are about either 4 or 5 positions that I could get when I get full time. So I can be like service and engagement, I can be head of general merchandise, HR, and others. So I'm like service and engagement, that's something that really like drew my attention because, I'm not only managing a team of team members, but I'm also interacting with the guests and the customers that come into the store. So I was like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to grow, which it was. Over the summer, I had to learn like my own like leadership style and how I would lead. And it was definitely a more diverse environment. Meaning like this is the first time that I've ever had to manage people who are like literally 2 to 3 times older than me. So it's kind of intimidating at first where it's like, okay, I have to tell somebody who is like 45, 50, 37, just to throw out some numbers, like what to do. And I didn't want it to come off as like, who was this young girl telling me what to do? But that's one of the things that kind of like drew me to the job itself, is that it gave me an opportunity to grow as a person and as a leader and kind of develop my own leadership and management style moving forward, because I may not be at Target forever. So also prepare me for just, life skills in general.
I think for me, it was mainly just, to be very frank, like, I don't know what I'm going to do after college. I don't know what things are looking like for me. And like, yes, being a sophomore, that I have time. And I think because I have time, I wanted to go into an internship and just see what it's like, see what they do, see if I'm interested in it, see if that's like sort of what I'm looking to do. And if not, then at least I had a great experience and I met great people, and then I move on and I try to find something else that may be my career path, my potential career path. That was really just the mindset that I had behind it. And because I had done work with youth organizations and nonprofits before, I just thought it was a great start, but it was also very different than anything I had done. I had focused so much in educational justice that this was a different realm. And I liked that because it was like a new territory that I was able to explore a little bit more. And looking at the chat, for me, I started looking for internships in July in the summer. Because a lot of them, like I said that they weren't looking for interns at the time, I was emailing them. So I feel like I did go in, I guess you could say, a non-traditional path. Like I didn't really go through like the application on the website as most people would. And as far as the timing, it varied. Some orgs got to me very quickly. Some took like a month or two, or it kind of just depended. I don't think that my experience necessarily is one that is the greatest example when it comes to timing, simply because, like I said, it was like literally like when no one knew if we were even going back to school because of COVID. So I think because of that, timing must have been like a lot longer than it typically would be. But yeah.
Kevin, I started, I want to say around like October of my junior year, because I wasn't really thinking about internships my first or second year of college, even though it's like good, like Lizzette and Nidhi, that you all were able to experience that. I applaud you, because I wasn't like looking. So I started around October of my junior year, and then that whole like 3 months periods of that year, probably like me looking and applying. And then I believe like my interview process probably started literally like 2 weeks after I had my first initial interview with Target. Again, Target was kind of different, because when I was at the internship fair that the CCD hosted, the recruiters there were basically like, would you like an interview? So it was like signing up for interviews. So the first initial interview you could have gotten at the fair. Then there was a second round of interviews based on your first round interview. So that process took about, I want to say maybe like a week or two. So within those moments, I was preparing, like utilizing the CCD's resources. So like mock interviews, and just making sure that my resume and cover letter was up to par. Even though, I've been working there for so long, I still wanted another set of eyes to look at it. So I would say roughly about a month or two for me personally. And then I got an offer letter after the internship. So this is probably like almost like a year after. Like 2 months shy of a year after, because again, I had to go through the internship first for Target to see if I'm a good fit, and then for me to see for myself if this is something that I wanted to do full time. So after this past summer, I remember moving in senior year last semester, around late August, early September, and I got a call saying that they offered me the position and I accepted. So I guess that everyone is different, but that was my timeline for me.
For me, I think this is what I've heard from a couple of professors whom I talked to, but they always recommended that if you're applying for an internship in the summer, you start looking at the end of your fall semester. That is what my advisor told me to do. So I was applying for an internship in the spring. So I started looking at the end of summer. And I think that gives you like enough time to get a whole range of options. So for me personally, for this application, I applied in October around like Naydrine, and I got my acceptance letter in the beginning of like right before the spring semester started. And then I did I'm doing my internship now in the spring semester. So yeah, and I think when it comes to like the difference between like when you apply and when you get your like offer, it like, as Lizzie mentioned, it varies a lot. So you can never say how it's, I know that for like corporate jobs, it's more streamlined. So because they're like recruiting managers and people whose whole job is this. So for them, it's like a little bit more streamlined, but for like other orgs, like it's going to be a lot more different and it's going to vary a bunch.
Great, thank you all. So next question, what barriers did you all face when looking for internship opportunities, and how did you overcome them? And how does race intersect with your role as an intern?
Some barriers. For me, I kind of felt like I was always getting beaten out by like the STEM majors and those like mathematics, because like, let me tell you, I'm not a science person, I'm not a math person. So I really felt like, dang, like this is what the market is hot for and I'm not what they're looking for. So it's like, how can I make myself feel, stand out from, what's popular right now? I remember like going over to, I think it was like Cigna, and I was like, I don't think I have what it takes, but let me just, try it. Because one thing about me, like the worst they can say is no, and I'll be in the same situation that I am right now, so it doesn't hurt. I think for me, like one of the biggest obstacles was like trying to find my niche and trying to figure out for me personally, like how do I want to make myself different from the rest. And then when it comes to like race and another thing, like personally, I kind of feel like sometimes, you know, when you are presented in a situation where you want to, you know, you're looking for better for yourself, or you want a job or position that, and where their market or the environment, it doesn't look like you, like majority is either like white dominated or male dominated, you kind of feel like someone looks at you and is like, I don't really think like you're qualified for the position or not. Or, you know, here's this Black girl, like, is she intelligent enough? Or, you know, looks at me based on my appearance and it's like, I don't really meet that norm that society has of like what a corporate person would look like. So, but one thing I just had to keep reminding myself, it was like, you know, if it's for me, it's for me. And people are my personality. Like if I stay true to like myself and who I am, people are going to, if you like me, you like me. And if you think that I'm qualified enough, then my race or my gender or whatever else shouldn't matter. If I'm qualified, I'm qualified. So it was just like little things like that. And just trying to like, just remind myself that like eventually, like I will get something. It may not be like soon when I want it, but you know, eventually. And then honestly, just like doing my research about the place that I want to go as well. Like, you know, if there's somebody that's not going to be welcoming to me, then I have to rethink, like, do I even want to work there? Even if it was like my dream job and stuff like that, because why am I going to work for a place that couldn't really, you know, give anything about me, you know? So that was like the two big things. Like if I was, you know, finding my niche and finding what makes me stand out and diverse, and then also looking at what who I identify as, and if the place that I want to look at, you know, reflects that, what's it called, includes that, and you know, just accepts me overall.
I 100% agree with everything you just said. Like it's definitely like, I feel like there's always, my dad told me this at a very young age, and it's gonna sound harsh a little bit, but there's always gonna be someone who's better than you at something. And like, and there's always gonna be someone who maybe doesn't have that strength in something that you may have that strength in. And that's not to discourage. I think that's just to like, because there are people who like, if we're being completely honest, have been working in multiple different orgs. And like for me being in public policy, they have like actually developed policy and they've been in those rooms and they've been in those committees. And I might not necessarily have that exact experience, but I think that doesn't make me, I guess, less qualified to even try to apply to these places. And I think that that's something that I definitely learned is, people will give you chances if they see that you are actually there and trying to like find those opportunities. I mean, everyone starts somewhere, and people do recognize that. And I think that for me personally, my major is Latino studies right now. So for me, every time I'm looking into places, I'm typically already looking into places that are majority people of color. But I will say, like, I do think about the environment that I'm stepping into, and are they filling a quota with me? Am I that person of color in the staff, or is this like a collaborative work effort? And those are things to keep in mind, because like mentioned before, like if you're going to be in an area that, like, let's say you're doing something you love, but the people around you, the environment around you aren't valuing your experience, or I guess your opinion in the way that they should, is that really a place you want to be in? Because I just think at the end of the day, regardless if you have a diploma or not, you have lived experiences that are valuable, that do mean something. It just because someone's certified in something doesn't mean necessarily that they know more than you. And I think having that mentality when you're walking into places, and especially spaces that can feel very intimidating, especially as a person of color, it's important, because you walk in and you're like, okay, you know your stuff, but I know my stuff too. So here I am, and I'm ready to give my best. And if I don't know something, guess what? I'm gonna learn it, and I'm gonna keep improving. So I think, yes, there can be many obstacles, but I always think it's your game plan. It's how you think of things. It's your mentality when you walk into things. You know what I mean? And sometimes there are things, external factors that are just kind of harder to overcome. For example, I remember pushing for Black and Latino curriculum in CT high schools, and it was passed, but there were a lot of pushbacks, and there were a lot of times when we worked on something and you work so hard on something that you're so passionate about, and then someone slams the door on it. And sometimes those things are like, those aren't things that you can control. Those are obstacles, and they're hard, yes, but then again, you just go and find another door to knock on and see what happens there. That was really long-winded, but essentially, you can't really remove obstacles, but what you can do is rise above them. And there's different ways of doing that.
For me, the biggest barrier to getting an internship or getting like career offers is that I'm not an American citizen. So not being an American citizen immediately like closes the door on like 6 out of 10 things that you might be interested in looking into. So I had to like work extra hard to find those opportunities that are available to non-citizens as well. So that means a lot more time spent researching, a lot more time convincing people that even though you're like an international student, technically you still deserve to like get the job or to like get the internship and that you have valid experiences. And I am studying economics, and that's historically the least diverse social science. And it's really interesting because pure maths and statistics have almost like 50-50 parity in terms of women and men, but economics is still at like 15 to 20% of women and minorities. And it's like, it's hard to break through because I have held a few research internships over my high school and college career, and almost all of them have been dominated by like, there have been mainly white men who held internship positions with me. So the current internship that I'm doing, I'm in a team of 5 people. I'm the only brown girl, and 4 of them are white guys from Princeton and Fordham and Harvard, and I'm like the only brown girl from like UConn. So it's like it's really hard and it's really competitive, but I've learned that they don't really, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but you're not really at an inherent disadvantage if you're a person of color, as long as you don't think about that and you just focus on improving your skills. And like, you have to be the most contributing person in a team. You have to be the person who comes up with like the ideas, and they have to be like competitive ideas, like they're not people shouldn't have to listen to you just because you're like a minority in a group full of like white people, and there is like this weird thing that, oh my god, we have to like listen to her, and be, if they reject an idea, they're like extra careful to not hurt your feelings. Like, these things can be like really discomforting and a little bit weird, but I think you just have to like focus on improving your skills. As Lizzie mentioned, you just have to like overcome them by just not focusing on that and improving how you can contribute to a team. So what you look like doesn't matter at all at the end of the day.
Thank you so much. There are definitely going to be a few more questions about these things from the audience, but we do have a couple more questions that we put together that we'd like to ask. So if you are currently participating in an internship or had a summer internship, what was your experience working remotely if you did do that?
It's awesome. I mean, I think I'm the only one who really likes like remote working. I think it's a lot of fun, especially because you can like handle a lot of things at once, and you don't have to like, I can't afford going to DC to do my internship, and that's where this internship is usually held. So this is a great opportunity for people who are like financially handicapped to kind of spend time doing something that you didn't think you had a chance of doing before.
Do you mind repeating the question?
Sure. So this is just about remote internships. If you did do an internship remotely during COVID-19, how was your experience? Because people might be doing internships right now or applying for internships in the summer that might also be remote. So what was your experience doing that?
I agree that there were a lot of advantages to it. For example, like I said, Quelf was in Hartford. I was nowhere near Hartford. Typically, they would have their interns come to the office and work at the office, especially those that were going to be working on answering client calls, which is what I was doing. But luckily, because of just remote, I think I was able to do it in my house. Like I said, I at that time, like personally in my life, there was a lot of things changing. I got my own place. I'm being more financially independent. And that in itself brings a lot of obstacles as well. So I think being someone that was able to work remotely was definitely a lot helpful. Um, and I just think honestly, I would love to go back and potentially work with Clove again. I was only able to work for the fall semester and not for the spring semester. And again, those were personal reasons. And I think that's something to highlight. Like, you need to do what's right for you. And I think sometimes as like I guess as a person of color, I think maybe just how I grew up and with family and everything, I'm always like, I don't want to let anybody down. And especially if it's something that like I really care about, I want to continue it. But sometimes you also have to know when I guess maybe you've carried too much on your plate and know when to and when to go and when to stop. And I mean, you can make anything work relatively if like you organize yourself, but you also know when you need to give yourself that time. So that's a separate thing, but I just think it's important to highlight because I think sometimes when people are looking for internships or scholarships, they're kind of like, oh, I need to build my resume. Like, who's gonna want me in a job? Who's gonna da da da? Like, I think sometimes we can overthink things a lot. In reality, the point of an internship is to help you build your skills and to help you develop into a better person. It's not just to make it look good for whatever potential employer you may have in the future.
My internship was in person, so I can't speak to this, but it was still like a good experience. It was kind of different because of with COVID, but it was still good overall.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question we have is what habits or supports are critical for being successful as an intern?
Sorry, go ahead, Lizzie.
Oh, I was just gonna say, organizing your time, making sure you're showing up on time. I think those are, I would say I'm gonna let her go because I'm still thinking about everything.
So before I did my internship, one of the things that I read, in fact, on LinkedIn, was when you're like starting an internship, you should speak up a lot the first week because you're entering a new space and people in the company or in the organization have already gotten used to like the way the place is run, whereas you're like a fresh set of eyes. So like your input will be most valuable in the first 2 weeks. So this is something that I did in my internship this semester that really paid off for me, was that whenever we had all company-wide meetings, I would like speak up whenever they asked if we had any questions or if we wanted to add anything. I would always make myself heard. And this helped me out because the CEO of the company reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and he asked to like talk to me, and he asked me for some ideas on this policy proposal that we were making up. And it was really interesting because I think this is like the only thing I can offer is that like make sure that you speak up in the beginning because that will kind of set a standard for you that you can continue later on.
Yeah, I actually think that's great feedback because when I had first started my internship, it's probably like going into week 2. I remember I was talking with my store director and my mentor, and we were just having our regular status meeting. And he was like, by this time I was kind of like warmed up to everybody already, but he was like, when I first, had seen you, I didn't even know that you were our like intern. Because I guess I wasn't really like speaking up and I was almost coming off as timid, but like if for those who personally know me know that I'm not really like the standoffish type, but I'm more of like the hey, like what's going on everybody. But I realized like when it comes into going into new environments, I tend to like kind of like, all right, let me not dim myself down, but I kind of like to feel the waters and kind of see like, the type of situation I'm going into, because I don't like to be caught off guard. So I like to just, feel the area. But I guess like with him, he wanted to kind of, because a lot of the job, like I said, is like being present, interacting with people, really giving your opinion and things. So it kind of took me a little bit to warm up. So had I known that beforehand, I would have came in from the jump, like, what is my goals? What is it that we're going to do today? X, Y, and Z. So I like that you had mentioned that, because that was something that my store director had told me like in week 2. And he was like, I almost didn't, if Laura didn't tell me that you were our intern, like I thought you just would have been a regular team member. I was like, oh my gosh, little do you know, like I'm one of those people that is ready to, get the party started. But yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that was said. What I was trying to make earlier, I just think like there have been times where like, well, I think also because I was working remotely, it was also kind of different in the sense of like Wi-Fi issues that I was having and et cetera, et cetera. Like showing up earlier was helpful because in case anything didn't work out, then like I was able to fix it before the meeting started. But I see Kevin wrote, when you were interviewing for an internship, what was the hardest question you were asked and how did you answer it? I think for me, typically, anytime I'm in any type of interview, whether it be in person or through the phone, uh, the hardest ones are the personal ones, like the ones that like are like, so what is it that like, I don't know, like, what is it that you, I feel like when it's like what you can contribute, da da da, like when it's kind of following a format that maybe you've already thought of, like making a resume or looking through the website, it's a lot easier to answer those. But I think the ones that are more unexpected and I guess maybe a little bit more personal, the ones that I find it harder to answer. The way that I answer them is honesty. I'm just myself. Like I think it was already mentioned, but I'm a big believer in like everything happens the way it's supposed to. So if like this place is the place that I'm meant to be and this is the place that like is gonna be for me, then it will. And so I don't know. I just try to answer it the most honest that I can while still keeping in mind sort of what they're looking for. Um and yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but that's the most that I can give right now.
Go ahead, Nidhi. I'll go after.
I was just going to say that like I recently had an interview which I haven't heard back from, but I'm pretty sure I got rejected from the job. I had to like we were talking about like reforming the US welfare system, and he asked me for to give 2 solutions for how to reform the US welfare system. And I didn't expect that because it was on the spot and I was really nervous and I kind of messed it up. So I think that like when people ask you like case questions, I think Hannah just shared something like super interesting about like preparing for interviews. When you have like case interviews where people ask you to solve a question or answer a question that's related to what you're going to be doing the internship in, those are the hardest for me personally. I can handle the personal questions because I've practiced interviews before, so like I've kind of got that in my head. But to come up with something on the spot is a lot harder. So yeah, that was really hard, Kevin.
For me, it's the questions where they ask like, what is like your weakness? Because it's like a weakness. I don't have no weakness, but it's like you don't want to come off as like, you're like this, almighty superwoman, Superman. So it was like for me, I really had to think of like, okay, if I had to think of a weakness, like what is something that I could work on? So I remember I used to say like it was like asking for help, and then sometimes I would say like time management, but I've gotten the hang of those. So like, God forbid if that question comes again, I'm going to be like, dang, like I got to find another weakness off the spot. But I would say it was like the weakness question. But I will say if you do get that question, try to think of what a weakness would be, but then also combat that and just say like, I have this weakness. However, I overcame it by, or say like, I'm working on it by doing this. So when I used to say, I had like time management issues, I would say, however, I got into the habit of organizing my weeks and my days. So planning out what I had to do for the rest of the week on the Sunday. So I know that this time, and that time, I would have this to do. When I used to talk about asking for help, I, said things like, you working with a team is very important, and it can give me different perspectives that I've never seen, or it can make the job work easier, so things like that. So the weakness one was something for me.
That reminded me of so this actually was an internship. This was a scholarship interview, but since we're talking about interviews, it was an Mlk scholarship, and they had asked me, out of all the things you've done, what's one of the things that you think Mlk would be most proud of? And like I remember being like, that's Mlk. Like, how am I supposed to know what he'd be proud of or what I did? Because I have not done anything near what he did. So I remember like in my head, like being like, oh crap. And like that was an in-person one where like they're literally like they're watching you, you're in person, they're waiting for you to answer on the spot. And I think like in those kinds of questions, yeah, it was a lot of pressure because it was like 6 people in one room and they're all just looking at me. But I think I just, for me in that specific question, I broke it down to his basic principles, and his basic principles was about helping his people advance and find equality. So therefore, I talked about the time that I went around my high school and I had coin jars, and I had teachers and students just literally put change if they could and had any on them, and eventually that change ended up to being $1,000 for hurricane relief in Puerto Rico. And so I sent that over. My uncle had like him and his church were working and going to remote areas that the red like other centers couldn't, and they were helping rebuild houses. So like I don't know. I just think like I said, it's a combination of being yourself, but also kind of like taking the question and like I don't know if you guys have heard TTQA, turn the question around. Sometimes when you don't really have the answer in your spot, if you like, well, if Mlk were here, I think he'd be proud of, like turning the question around gives you that time to like kind of think about the answer while you're on the spot. So yeah.
Thank you all. That was wonderful. Yeah, I'd say as someone who works at the Center for Career Development and someone who's done a practice interview before, practice interviews are so important, and looking at common interview questions before an interview is so important, because there are a couple questions like, tell me about yourself, greatest strength, greatest weakness, like Naydrine was speaking about. Those are questions that will come up. So it's helpful to have experience doing it on the spot and practicing. So check out the link I threw in the chat. I have one more question before we get to some of the questions that people submitted before the presentation. And that is, what did you learn from your internship and what are your next steps? I know some of you are, 2 of you are sophomores, Naydrine's graduating, but yeah, overall, like what did you learn from your internship, or what are you learning, and what are your next steps after this?
What I learned is that I learned like I said earlier, like my own leadership style. So like after like really the first week or two and getting feedback from my store director, and he was like, I want to see you being more present, not even like more present, but kind of asserting yourself more as a leader. So like taking the initiative to make calls and decisions. When I first started, I was like, I didn't want to step on nobody's toes because they already had, the store had their own managers. I was just more shadowing and learning from them. So I didn't want to be stepping on like, oh yeah, like I told Nick to go do this. And it's like, well, Naydrine, I already had him working on the task. So I didn't want to come into any conflict like that. So it was like more trying to figure out how I was going to be a leader, how I was going to make myself relatable with the team, because, me personally, if I was working on a job and I had a new manager or somebody who didn't even make the time to come introduce themselves to me and they were telling me what to do, I'm like, well, who the heck is this girl telling me what to do? And then especially, like I said earlier, with the age difference between me and a lot of the other team members, I just wanted to make it known that, like, hi, my name is Naydrine. I'm currently, doing an internship for executive team lead. If you ever see me around, you don't see the other managers that you're used to seeing, just know you can come talk to me. Because not only did it gave me a chance to introduce myself and kind of show my leadership style, but it also allowed me to create my own like getting my feet wet experience, because me telling them like, okay, you can come to me, it's like when they have a problem and they bring it to me, it's like, okay, now it's go time, and it's like a test for me to see, okay, how can I handle this situation, because eventually I'm going to have to handle it on my own. So those are one of the biggest things, just like developing my leadership style, and then also working with a great diverse set of team, because also it was like after the summer, I went back over break to work with them too at the same store. So now it's like a whole bunch of new faces because it was seasonal time. So it was kind of like a test for me. And then the next steps forward, like I said, I got offered full time. So I will be working at Target starting in June, I believe, like the beginning of June. I'll do like 6 weeks of actual training for the current position. So like I said, it's like 4 or 5 departments that they could pick me for. So I don't really know which one, but once I get there, it'll be about 6 weeks of training, and then I'll place at a store. And then yeah, got my big girl pants on, adult life, because this is it. It's like, no, like, oh my gosh. Because like as an intern, you can make mistakes. Like anytime that I made a mistake, I just, like I'm an intern, so you could just blame it on being an intern. Because internships, you're meant to learn things. It's kind of like okay to make mistakes because it's a learning process. Now it's like, well, so like one thing I did learn that I will utilize, like relying on people. So one thing that I did when I was at my internship, but I was telling people, I was like, listen, even though I'm technically your superior, in this setting right now, you know more than me. So I will rely on you all to kind of show me how things are going, how things have gotten done. And then from then on, develop my own style of like, okay, maybe I can see room for change here and there. But until I got to that point, I was heavily relying on the other team members and my fellow like co-managers as well. So yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. Basically, just what did you learn from your internship and what are your next steps?
I think working at Quelf was just honestly reality check in many ways. I think like hearing clients and like hearing the things that they were going through, I think sometimes when you are looking into policy and you're trying to build policy or implement policy or whatever it is that you're doing in policy, sometimes it's very easy to get focused on like the exact policy, but not and like the overall general effect that it will have on people, but then to actually hear people and their stories and different varying stories of how their life is going and how one way or another policy is affecting them is definitely like it's a reality check. Like if this is what you're going to go into, it's important to be active in that community, to know how it's going to affect people, not just in a larger scale, but even smaller scales. And there are a lot of stories that like were difficult to hear. There were stories that and I knew that coming into it, but I think actually like then being in that space and like hearing people's stories about, for example, homelessness, people who were around my age or maybe even a little bit older, not that far off, as far as being able to relate to them was definitely difficult. And I think being an intern 12, I'm not a lawyer. I don't have like the right to like necessarily help them other than I can't give them advice. So I couldn't tell them like, well, if I was in your position, I would like, I cannot do that. The only thing that I could do was give them information. So I could give them links to resources. I could tell them how the court system works. I can tell them what forms to fill out. I can even send them to potential lawyers or potential advisors, but I myself and I could not like actually give them advice or help them any further. And I felt at one point it kind of enforced, for me personally, it made me feel like, yeah, this is definitely kind of where I want to go, because it was like it sucked. Like, to be honest, it sucked not being able to help more than just giving plain information. And I think that was something that I definitely learned, and it definitely kind of motivated me to continue down that path. So moving forward, I decided to apply to the public policy master's program. And so I'm waiting to hear back. And basically, it's where I'll be taking graduate courses in my undergrad, so that when I graduate, I take one more year of grad courses, and then I should be getting my master's in public policy. So I'm excited about it, and I definitely think that I would have never have known about it had it not been for, actually for PRLAC, the Latin American Cultural Center. But then also with my experiences with Quelf, I don't think I would have really understood what it was about, or probably had applied to it had I not gone through my internship. Yeah.
For me, I'm probably going to be applying to a lot more similar internships over the next 2 summers, and I'm going to do research in India for a semester or a summer. I'm not sure yet. And after that, I'm just probably going to apply to grad school in statistics or economics. So that's all that I know as of now.
Great, thank you. So we're going to move into some questions that attendees submitted before when they registered. So one question is, how do you handle being treated differently, such as being overpraised or being undermined by white supervisors or colleagues?
I personally never had that experience. Which one thing that I liked about Target, and specifically the store that I was at, everyone was literally so welcoming. It was kind of like a family. Like, it was even like as shocking to me to see like how what's the word, like comfortable, for lack of a better word, that everybody was with each other, like, and I guess that developed like over time. But literally, with the team that I was working with, it was very diverse. So I seen people who look like me, I seen Hispanics, Asians, like, white people. It was like all different types of races. So I've never had been put in any situation where I was like undermined or I was taken of as less than. I feel like any recognition or praise I got was something that I deserved, because I worked for it. I did something really well. And also I got feedback too, like constructive feedback at the same time, because that was the whole point of like the internship, is like, I performed something and then I was praised, or I was given like, okay, this is where you could do a little bit better. So I don't think I've ever been, over the course of the 6 weeks, we're in a situation where I felt like that. Not saying that will never not happen, because it probably will. I would just say, like, I guess an advice that I would have to myself or to whoever asks a question, like in the future, like, just finding somebody that you are comfortable with and that you trust within the organization, and then talking to them about it. I think typically they'll be like your HR person is your go-to, but like, let's be honest, sometimes the HR person may not even be like the HR person that they're supposed to be, sadly. So I would just say, just finding that person that you're comfortable talking in within the organization, and then see where it goes from there. But me personally, like, my experience was very welcome, and it goes back to what we were saying beforehand, like from the initial point of finding a job or internship, choosing a place that aligns with your values, who you are, if they accept you, because that will lessen your chance of ever running into a situation like that. If that makes sense.
I can give so many examples of the times that I've been in that situation. As far as Quelf, the internship that I was a part of, luckily a lot of the staff were women of color, and so I didn't really have to deal with that at all at Quelf. But in my other experiences in youth organizations and working in policy, I have had numerous encounters. And one of the prime examples was Hearing Your Voices. We were working to defund the police, and basically defunding the police meant the police had a huge budget, and a lot of the police officers that were working in the city of New London were having higher, like overall, they were getting paid more than average citizens in the city by a lot. And so what we were trying to do is, we weren't trying to get necessarily rid of the police. We were just trying to remove some of the budget that they were having into resources that was going to help the community. So we're talking here counselors, doctors, like people and places that were actually going to help community and citizens improve, or just different things like that. And so basically we were putting pressure on the city council, is the reality. We were. And so I remember having conversations with a lot of the politicians and even the mayor himself. And they do what a lot of politicians do. I'm so glad you're taking interest in community, and they'll like gaslight, like they'll just be like, thank you so much for your time, and then they'll like BS you into like not answering your actual question or not actually like, collaborating for what you're there for. And I remember this one time specifically, we were protesting peacefully, and the mayor comes out after a long time. And so we're asking him questions. We had prepared questions for the mayor, and we were hoping that like media coverage was going to help this go around the city so people could see really what the issue was and how the mayor was responding to them. And I remember the mayor being so frustrated that he looked at me and he said, "Are you just here for publicity?" And it was definitely interesting. Obviously this man is white, and this man has the biggest salary out of anybody in this city. And I remember like we kept asking him questions, and he was just kind of like, well, I had to decrease my salary significantly due to such and such. But when you look at the numbers, okay, his salary was decreased, but he's still the highest paying person in the city, and he's living very lavishly when people in the city are not. And this is especially during a time where there's COVID, and he had declared racism a public health issue, but that's it. Like he had no plan for it. He had nothing behind it. It was just here, a declaration. And so definitely I've been in those spaces, and I think honestly, number one is keeping your cool. I think like not getting upset that there's clearly someone who is being ignorant or not valuing what you're there to do. And for that, I would say A, keeping your cool, B, facts. Like we were hitting him with facts behind facts after facts. You can't argue against reality. And I think like that's part of the reason why he was saying the things he was saying, is because he was getting frustrated and he knew he was losing against things that we had researched and we knew were correct and right. So I would just say that and like I mentioned before, like just support, have people behind you, because after a while, like when I need to take a break and take a step back from that conversation, there were other people ready to do their part in that conversation while I took a break from it. And I don't think it's ever really easy to be in those situations. There are other situations that are not as intense. They're more like subliminal, they're more like on the low, and even those can be like aggravating. But I think keeping your cool and showing the best that you have to show at the end will speak more volumes than whatever anybody else is trying to throw at you.
I personally haven't had any issues with people treating me like overtly treating me as like inferior or like trying to overpraise. I don't know if like praise is like an adequate measure of someone like treating you differently because of the way you look or like your race, because that's obviously like what are those like unspoken unmeasurable metrics. So I can't say, but I personally haven't had any experiences like that.
Great, thank you all. So the next question is actually for Nidhi. Do you have any suggestions for international students to get an internship in the United States?
Just like there are a lot of internships that are being offered to international students. It's just that they're much harder to find than the traditional internships. So most like economic students tend to pursue internships in the Federal Reserve, and all those internships are closed off to you because you're not an American. So you have to like look for opportunities out there that are specifically for internships that for international students, or that allow international students to come on. So you should be looking at like Chegg internships. You should be obviously Googling and finding out what's available out there. And you're going to have to cancel a lot of options, but there will be a few in your field. It depends on what you're studying.
So a lot of the other questions that we got were answered. I think, so when is the best time to apply? I think it depends on the industry. It depends on when you're looking to do the opportunity. I'd say it's never too early or too late. If there is an open application, you could submit. There's often a myth about, you know, if there's a job posting and it's been up for 30 days, you know, you have no chance. That's not true. If you're looking for, you know, some summer opportunities, I'd start looking now. And we have resources on the Center for Career Development's website about different job boards, our career communities, which I posted in the chat, kind of breaks down opportunities by different industries. I think another, looks like we just got another question. Did you have a mentor that helped you during the internship application process, or a mentor in general? If yes, how did you find that person?
I can answer this question because I specifically reached out to a lot of professors in the economics department, and I think it's very helpful to reach out to professors, and because they can usually hook you up with scholarships or companies or things that they think that might be right for you. So the best way to do that is to read something that they've published or some of their research, and then meet them in the office hours and ask them a question about it. And then get to know them more. Most are usually very helpful and are willing to help you out if you take the initiative. So professors are a great resource.
Again, I'm gonna keep coming back to my CCD because really I met a lot, even just I feel like me working there kind of helped me in a way where if I didn't work there and I just came across as a regular student, I don't think I would have gotten as much as I did out of it. But I definitely had my go-to people or persons there that I could go and talk to about, if I was changing a major or anything about my classes or interviewing process or looking for a job, that they definitely had a great insight on tips and tricks and feedback on to how to be a great applicant, a great interviewee, and things of that nature. So I personally had my, I guess you would say, mentors or my go-to people here on campus. But to the person who asks that, if you're also want to know about how to look about finding a mentor, just finding professionals that you are comfortable with talking to. So whether it be in your cultural centers, in any of the resources we have on campus, so the Academic Achievement Center, the CCD, or any of those resources on campus. Also any counselors, advisors, anyone like that you think that you are comfortable with sharing information with and talking to, but also that you think that they're knowledgeable enough to help you get to a certain place that you can go to.
I personally didn't have a mentor when applying to my internships. However, I will say that networking is definitely really important. I know that before COVID, when we were on campus, I had a few people that I knew that I can go to. Some of them were people who had worked at UConn, and other people were just friends, either my major or old. Well, most of my friends are older than me, so most of them are seniors. So that's really helpful because they'll tell you hey, so there's this, or they'll tell you I wish I did this, and then that's how it kind of works. So I'm just saying, even if you don't have necessarily a mentor right now when applying to internships, you could still do this. You could still get through it and you could still find an internship. But looking towards the future, I definitely think it's a great idea to build those network connections with people, because you never know like what may happen, or if someone finds an opportunity like, hey, I think you'd be great for it. Life's like kind of crazy like that. Sometimes you just never know.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really important to build those connections in all areas of your life, at and around UConn. So your TA, your classmates, your professors, advisors in cultural centers, the Center for Career Development, Center for Students with Disabilities, any area where you're really like, you're in contact or you're using resources, those people are there to help you. So, reach out to them and tell them your story, what you're looking for, and they'll keep you in mind when different opportunities come up. We got another question about, I mentioned the career communities on our website, which is a breakdown of like different industries. We also have affinity communities on our website, and I'm going to put a link to that in the chat right now. So what affinity communities are pages on our website geared for different communities of people. So we have an affinity community for women. I have it right here. So the different affinity communities we have are Asian American and Pacific Islander, Black and African Americans, First Gen, international students, Latinx, LGBTQ+, Native and Indigenous peoples, religiously affiliated, students with disabilities, undocumented students, veterans and service members, and women. So all of those different pages are full of resources, job postings. There are job postings, blogs, student success stories, events that are specifically catered to students within that community. So that could be a really helpful place to read about student success stories, maybe reach out to those students and connect with them. They could be a mentor. I've had mentors that were my age. They don't have to be older than you, but maybe someone that has an experience that you're looking to have yourself. So that could be a great resource. Let's see if there are any other questions. Some of you have talked about this already, but what is one common internship misconception that you want people to know is not true? Anyone? Yeah.
I would say maybe like this is with internships, but I think just generally like with looking for jobs and things of that nature, like some industries do require you to have a specific skill set. So like say for example, if you were like in the tech industry and they wanted you to learn like how to use like Python, or you had to have like 5 years plus of experience in doing computer coding, like that's one thing. But then I think generally with like everyday skills or things that are easy to learn, I would say, because some people like, oh, if you don't have the skills, like don't apply to it. Like no, like for me, I would like if I show that I'm a great learner, or I'm willing to learn or take the time to learn something, and I already am bringing to the table great communication skills, verbal, written, teamwork skills, and those transferable skills that they really like. And then there's a certain like skill set specific to that job that I'm missing, I can just say like, not say, but like, make it known that I'm a great learner, like, or I'm willing to learn. You showing that, taking that initiative to tell them like, I may not be as qualified or like have all the qualifications, but if you give me a chance, or if you're still open to taking other applicants, like I'll be ready to learn. That's probably something that, even if you may feel like you're not qualified, still apply. And, it is by case scenario, because I'm gonna be honest, some industries do require you to have certain skill sets, either at years of experience or whatever the case may be. But if they don't have those certain specific requirements, I would definitely just say like, apply for it, because the least they can say is no, and you're not any worse off than you are. So yeah.
Great. So since we have about 5 minutes left, I'd like to wrap up with a question just about like general advice. Maybe if you could gear your advice towards someone who's never done an internship before, or maybe never applied for internships before, that would be great. So any last words of wisdom or advice for someone interested in applying for internships specifically as a BIPOC person?
Probably I would say like do a lot of like dedicate at least like an hour a week just like looking into what opportunities you can actually do. So like you need to do a lot of research and you need to like apply to a lot of things, and you're probably going to get rejected from a lot of things as well if they're competitive internships. So if you're just starting out, my advice would be to just like find out things that you're interested in and take the offer, even if it's not as fancy or as like cool as you thought it would be. It's still good to get experience if you're a beginner. So research and take advantage of every opportunity you can take advantage of, no matter what your starting expectations are.
I would just say, oh, sorry, you can go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just to not be discouraged with those no's. Like I think like a lot of people can be scared of rejection, and then I know some people will stop themselves from doing something because of that fear of rejection. But I think like I rather live a life of knowing how things turned out instead of a life of like what ifs or if I had. And I think like that's just kind of part of it. I think like the whole, like I said, the whole point of internships is for you to learn and to improve, and people know that like as you're applying, and I think there is no harm in applying because you never know what might happen. So yeah.
I agree with the other two. Like I would say the same thing. If I was to add anything else, is like really just don't doubt yourself. Even if you may think, like I said earlier, you may not be qualified, still apply. But also like taking it easy on yourself. Cause I know like a lot of times, especially like my peers or like people who are, around my age getting ready to graduate and they may not have things lined up like some other people, everything comes in due time and due season. So just, take it day by day, as long as you're putting in the work, like Nidhi said, taking those times to like research and look, and just putting in the work, and then staying consistent and just believing in yourself, I feel like you should be fine. But don't count yourself out of any opportunities because you think, oh, I'm not this or I'm not that, or maybe there's somebody else, or like, and trust me, if things are meant for you, they're meant for you. So like, just always just don't count yourself out.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Before we officially end today, I'd ask for any attendees to fill out this survey. I just sent it in the chat about this presentation, and this session has been recorded, so this will be available as soon as we can get it uploaded to YouTube. So you can look out at our UConn Center for Career Development YouTube if you'd like to refer back to any of the advice and perspectives that you've heard today. Thank you so much for joining. Hope you all have a great rest of your week.